is the Amadon Planet Podcast, episode 30. I am your host, Joel Amadon. Thank you for joining me on this never-ending quest to figure out how to teach better. Today on the podcast, I am joined by Matthew Mifflin. Matthew is an artist and songwriter with Phrygian Frog Music Professionals and Phrygian Frog Records. Matthew recently released his first single, Each Day, from his upcoming album, No Context. But listeners to this podcast know Matthew better, at least for now, as the musical director of the Amadon Planet Podcast, a title I've bestowed on him recently. But in other words, he's the creator of the music that has the beginning and end of each episode of the podcast. It's called Lost and Found. And he lovingly gave that to me because also we're family members as well. But I've wanted to have Matthew on the podcast this year because we are talking about this idea of create. The word of the year is create, and being creative in our teaching, and especially now with the context that we're teaching in with regards to COVID-19 and all sorts of flipping online and whatever, but thinking about tapping into that creative spirit through the arts, really, and thinking we first launched it with talking about Rick Rubin's podcast, Broken Record, with Malcolm Gladwell, and then we talked to Andrew Radcliffe, and we've done a couple other things that were regards to tapping into this creative arts, and now we get to talk to Matthew finally, and a great excuse to talk to him also because of the new single and the upcoming album. So without further delay, Matthew, thank you for joining me on the podcast. How are you?
Hey, Joel, thanks so much. Thanks for having me, man. I'm doing great. I hope you're doing well with everything that's going on.
It's great. I mean, I think you know, whenever we are at family events and I get a chance to talk to you, Matt, I think like all the energy you have and your sense of humor, and then also just even the times when you brought out the instruments and be able to play for us and stuff like that. It's been exciting to get to know you and to get excited to see this new endeavor you're on with regards to the album. And also just and also another background too is I didn't mention in the intro was your teaching experience and teaching music lessons, and you're both in person and now virtual lately too. And so tapping into all that expertise and thinking about how do we leverage some of that and learn some lessons from it from regards to thinking about our own teaching for all the listeners out there, but then just learn a little bit about the music process. I'm interested in this because Matt, I think I want to be a country music singer eventually. I'm 42 now, so I don't know if I could talk about, drinking beer, pickup trucks, and going to the party, but maybe about arthritis or something like that. I have no idea if that's a good content for country music. Anyway, so Matt, can you give me a little bit of background on yourself and maybe your experience with music?
Sure. I think, I know for me, music, I was just talking to my mom about it the other day. She was talking about even as we're talking like 1, 2, 3 years old, that I couldn't walk past the piano. I just always wanted to play it, touch it, hear the tones, and she mentioned how she used to play classical music for me every night when I would go to bed. And I think that kind of definitely subconsciously, awakened those brain waves in me. And it's always been a love of mine. Started taking piano lessons as early as the age of 4. And I was able and had the opportunity to work with some very talented teachers throughout the years. And I think that's where, when we talk about the teaching side of things, I definitely found myself, as I became more comfortable as a music teacher, kind of going back and thinking, okay, what was it about this particular teacher that pushed me to get to that next level? Or what did I enjoy and what I disliked, to kind of filter myself to be a better teacher. So I continued to take music lessons until the end of high school. Around junior year of high school, that's when playing the piano wasn't so cool. It was kind of it was kind of I would and my wonderful teacher George Eklund, he's no longer with us, but I can remember times when I had my license that I was headed off to my piano lesson and I wouldn't go. I wouldn't show up. It got to that point where I just thought I need to do something else. I can't keep doing this. So I think it was around 5th grade, kind of backtracking a bit, that my parents bought me an acoustic guitar. And I thought, I want to play guitar. This is what I want to do. This is it. Well, I didn't touch that guitar for 3 years.
Oh, wow.
It sat in the closet, didn't touch it. I pulled it out and thought, this is kind of hard. This hurts my fingers. I really don't want to do this. So it took a friend of mine in 8th grade. He got a guitar and we kind of started learning songs together. Back in those days, it was Nirvana, Green Day. just a power
Oh, yeah.
chord kind of stuff. And that really, and I found myself playing all of the time, whether it be Beatles chords books or working with Dave Lazarus from church, who just kind of showed me the basic chords. But, during that time, I had a paper route. But so we'd get up at 5 in the morning, deliver papers. And before school, I would go down to the basement and play guitar for an hour,
Oh,
and
wow.
then I get ready
Yeah.
for school and I go. I just was drawn to it, and I think that goes back to even being a young child. I mean, it's been something I've always gravitated towards. So, when I started getting into the guitar, I joined a band when I was in 8th grade. And I thought that was the coolest thing because these were like the cool guys in school. They already had their little band,
Yeah. Yeah.
and they asked me to join the group, and we played like, the last day of school we played on stage, and it's super cool. And to their credit, it was an original song that we played, and then we played a
Nice.
couple covers. But yeah, and then it just took off from there. Again, I formed another band with a friend of mine in high school. We would play parties, we would do all those things. So it's just, for me, it's always been about kind of keeping it going, but also be willing to learn and to learn new things. And that's why I tell a lot of my students, it's very important to play with other people, because you never know what you're going to pick up from them. They may have a little trick that they can do, and believe me, all musicians that gig out and record have their own little tricks. You got to be willing to listen. You got
Yeah.
to listen and pick up on it. So and then throughout college, of course, I was always playing. I was the guy that was playing in parties, and I would sit in my dorm room and we'd be hanging out, and they'd ask me to play, and so I'd just play music, and I would just make up songs and about people in the room. I just
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
lot of improv kind of stuff, and I think that really developed me as a lyricist. Kind of be willing to kind of be open to what's around me, and kind of take it in and process it, and then kind of bring it back out in another light or whatever. But um, yeah, it's always been there. Now, now I'm to the level where, I've recorded these songs, at home, and I've joined up with Phrygian Frog Records and Jason Waddell, who's been fantastic. And we're able to put these songs out in the world and kind of see what happens. And it's really exciting and nerve-wracking at the same time.
Yeah. I think we had that conversation recently where kind of had that parallel with, putting out, I think I had episode 0 of the podcast out, and it was like, I recorded in my closet. It sounds awful, but it's still out there. And the fact that, like, just having it out there and hitting like publish and putting something out in the world, and just hoping, gosh, I just hope somebody finds any value out of this, or, like, hey.
Yeah. And that's all you can do. And that's where, Jason has really opened my eyes to that. Because, just as you said, we all have these insecurities. Are people going to like it? Are they going to listen? Does it sound good enough? Well, it gets to the point where, if you don't put it out, what are you going to do? You're going to look back in 15, 20 years and think, man, I wish I just would at least tried it, put it out there. And what a good feeling it is, just
Yeah.
even putting it out there. And then the sleepless nights come, are they going to listen? Are they going to buy it?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I wanted to touch base a little bit before we we have some questions we want to work through, but I mean, just even some things that I heard from what you already said, like the idea of doing things together. And like, one thing I say a lot on this podcast is we're better together. And so, having those, especially now with teachers that are trying to figure out, how am I going to, revamp all my teaching? And the fact that if they're sitting there trying to pound their head against the wall and do it on their own, it's like, you're not going to work, right? You need to have that partner to basically make music with, right? To in order to figure out how to do this. But even to think like the whole learning tricks, and even we had a conversation recently where you showing me a transition, like from one chord to another, and like, hey, here's how your fingers, and like something I had never even thought about. And you're like, it took me 10 years to get this trick, but now, you bestowed it on me. And the thing is, like, that's the same thing. Like, even in the last episode of the podcast, we talked with Jen Wolf, and she had, accumulated all these things that you could do with Google Slides and things like that in order to help others. And it's like, again, way to like, hey, we're better together in sharing those things. And so having that, this goes into learning theory. Like, there's a guy named Vygotsky, he talks about the zone of proximal development. And it's like what you can do with help, right? I'm this good on my own, but with a little bit of help, I can get to this good. And it sounds like your relationship with Jason is kind of leading you to there, right? Where he's kind of helping you take your songwriting and performance to the next level.
Oh, absolutely. And that's where I immediately saw him and saw, what he knew. And, just to backtrack a little bit too with Jason, this started, I took a music course at Lincoln Land. When I went back to finish my college degree, they told me,
Hmm.
hey, you need to get your GPA up. What's a class you think you could do pretty well in? And I thought, you know what, I'll take a music class, that'd be great. And Jason, immediately was drawn to, just he's on a whole nother level of
Hmm.
knowing stuff music. So I've been able to, just in conversation and watching him work, I've learned so much, and going back to the teaching, when I started teaching music, I had never done it before, and
Yeah.
this was up in the suburbs of Chicago. And it was kind of a big deal. I moved up there with my friend Paul, slept on his floor, in the same house as his wife and his 2-year-old, and he got me a job at Allegro Music and Dance Company, Academy, I'm sorry. And it was, I was scared to death, but there were so many other wonderful teachers there that I wanted to make sure to take the time to talk to sit in with, to listen to them, and just to, like you said, I mean, if I would have tried to do it on my own, it would have been a very rough year or even 2 years,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
they helped me so much. And without them, I would not have been able to do it.
It's like, I mean, you would have figured it out, but it's like you just get that. It's almost like a nitrous if for Fast and Furious people out there. It's like something like that just pushes your teaching to I mean, just pushes it ahead so much. I mean, even thinking about what Jen did with regards to if people are looking at Google Slides. I mean, she just gave a big, huge dose to push people forward, and that's the thing. What you do with that collaboration. So not only with your, talking with your buddies and learning tricks and things like that, but now when you move into not just learning music, learning how to do music, but learning how to teach music. I mean, it's a whole different ball game, and having those colleagues in order to learn, that's a great lesson there.
Oh, it's huge. It's huge.
So speaking of your the things you've learned teaching music, what are some learnings you had? What are some big things that you can pull out and be like, you know what, I learned that with regards to teaching music?
Well, for me, right out of the gate, when I thought about this question, I thought number one for me is to be prepared. And that's not just with material to work on. That's not just, a certain method or a certain piece of music. It's also to be mentally prepared. In the music teaching world, oftentimes you only have 30 minutes with the student. And
Right.
in that 30 minutes, in my mind, I want to get done as much as possible and pack in the knowledge without overwhelming them. So if I have found that if I come with, 3 things to work on, they may be 3 totally different things. If one isn't hitting and that student is not buying into it, not enjoying it, I can pivot and I can move on to another,
Mm.
another way, whether it be, if we started out playing classical music and they're not feeling it, they're not really doing, okay, let's switch it up and, let's play an Ed Sheeran song, or let's learn how to do that kind of thing. And you can see those eyes light up in those kids, and
Yeah.
they're loving it, and
Uh-huh.
they come back the following week and like, I played every day this week, and it's like, okay, that's what we're going to go with.
There you go.
I'll throw some note reading stuff on there as well. But I have found, again, if I am prepared for these lessons, then you can get the most out of them each and every week. Um,
What I like there
Another,
too, Matt,
yeah,
let me interrupt you. Sorry.
well, you just did, so.
Yeah, yeah. No, I mean, like, think about like you're coming in with anticipation of things, and so like this, for technical term, you did some assessment. Hey, I'm seeing the kids not jiving with this. I've got something already prepared that I'm going to pivot to in order to tap into what they're interested in. And not only that, not only did we have a good lesson, but now you've got an engaged student that's playing it, that's doing the work outside of class, which is probably pays double dividends, makes your job even easier once you come back to like, hey, I paid attention to my student. Now they are paying attention to what I taught them. Now we got a ball game. That's yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Yep. And that feeling is just wonderful, and that's where the lessons become enjoyable. You can
Mm-hmm.
really, you can see them grow and things like that. And, that kind of goes along to another thing that I've learned is just the ability, you have to have the ability to adapt. And when we talked about this pre-show a little bit, where, I've had students that are just, they are set on learning the guitar. Well, they're 7 years old,
Yeah.
and going back to when I got my guitar was in 5th grade, I wasn't quite ready yet, so some of these kids, and you can try it, but they're going to struggle for a while, but if you can adapt and say, okay, what we're doing here, it's just, I don't want this to be a nightmare for you. That's going to turn you off, and I'm afraid you'll never play music again. Have you tried to play the ukulele?
Yeah.
Have you tried that? And again, it's just amazing to see, after struggling to play a G major chord or a D major chord in the guitar, you hand that ukulele and you say, okay, this is the C major. And you can see him just smile and go, well, I only have one finger down.
One finger. Yeah. Yeah. That's
One
awesome.
finger on these nice, soft nylon strings, and then they, jump into it, and they just start taking off, and you can tell that they're playing at home. Mom and dad are happy, they're getting their money's worth. But also, I mean, I just posted a video of my 4-year-old on Facebook. I showed her like a little 2-note chords, and she's playing them all the time. And man, I couldn't be happier. I mean, just hearing music in the house coming from somewhere else or someone else other than me is just, I mean, one of the biggest joys in my life. And I that makes me so happy when I hear from the parents. Just like, wow, he or she is really enjoying it. They're playing all the time. It's like, well, that's what we're here to do. I want to teach them not only how to play a C major chord, but if they practice and play and get better, then they can play even more, and then they'll want to play more. And it's just a really cool circle of musical knowledge, really. And they don't even know they're learning so much because they're having so much fun.
Well, that not only works for 7-year-old children, it works for middle-aged men as well. I remember you I don't know why you bought a ukulele or something like that. You let me dink around with it at Christmas. And I think that week I looked on Craigslist, found somebody in whatever town we were traveling to. I think it was Milwaukee at that time. And I found somebody that was looking to sell a uke, bought it in the middle of a snowy street in Milwaukee, pretty shady actually. And then got to play. And cause I was one of those kids when I don't know if do you remember the Sears catalog, like the Wish book? Do you ever see that?
I do remember that. I think I was kind of at the tail end, but I do remember.
I mean, it was a big deal when the catalog that you could maim somebody with came in the mail, and it was like, there's I always would dog ear the page that had the guitars on it, because I always want to play guitar. And I think my parents did get me piano lessons at a time, and I learned a little. I took them for 4 months, and that was about it. That was all I had. And I remember doing little things here and there, and I'd pick up books and stuff, but I always wanted to play. I always was drawn to music. And I had a guitar in college, and some guys would teach me, but it was really hard. I got small hands. I'll blame it on that. So I got small hands and it didn't work. And so then when you showed the ukulele, and I was like, wow, I learned 2 or 3 chords in 10 minutes, and was able to actually make something that sounded somewhat good and was addicting, and then getting in. So it's giving that little, it's almost like an on-ramp, and this, you can do some things here. You might be limited musically with a ukulele, but still you're going to be producing music, and it's going to want maybe to lead you. And then when pandemic happens, I'm like, you know what? We're not doing a lot of things. We're not driving gas. We got a little bit of money, and we need something else to do. I'm going to get a guitar. And you told me some chords to do, and I'd been dinking around with the ukulele for a few years, and now the guitar has become easier. Now when I even go back to the ukulele, it was again, fast forward to playing that even better. And it's this back and forth of the two instruments has been, just accelerating each other. It's kind of it's a neat thing to see.
Oh, it's so cool. It's so cool. And you said it perfectly. I mean, and I even think of that, and this goes on to another thing that I've learned. And this is something that Jason has reminded me both when I was in his class, and now as we're mixing and recording music. You can't let your ego get in the way as a teacher, with especially in music. I bought my ukulele that I showed you. I remember that when I was working for Allegro Music and Dance Academy, they approached me and said, hey, this was the Taylor Swift kind of time. She was coming out and, playing the uke and all that kind of stuff. So there was a bunch of 15 to 18-year-old girls that wanted to play the ukulele, and they didn't have a ukulele teacher. It just wasn't in the flow of what was cool at the time. So we were getting ready to take a family trip up to Michigan, And I thought, you know what? Before I go, I said, okay, give me a week and I'll learn the ukulele, and then I'll be ready to teach it. So I went and bought a ukulele. I took it up to Lake Michigan, and I would spend every morning down by the water, playing for a couple hours and kind of, looking up chords and essentially learning the ukulele. But it that all of a sudden my client list was boosted by 15 students. They really took to it, and a lot of those students went on to play piano, guitar, go to
Mm,
college for music, because they were just into it and they played all the time. And it was like the perfect segue instrument to others, to other instruments, just getting them
yeah.
going. Again, we come back to that a lot, but just that want to play. I tell my students, I I want you to get to the point where you can't walk past your piano, or you
Yeah.
can't walk past your ukulele or guitar without, we may not always have the time, but at least not, I want you to like want to play it.
That's right.
That's what we want. That's what we want. And even now, I know my kids would laugh at me right now because I walk by our piano 100 times a day. But I can honestly say that every time I do, I'm looking at that piano. I'm thinking, ooh, I'd really like to sit down and try to create something right now, or play a piece of music, or just it's so cool. So yeah, the ukulele, um, for me, going back to the ego thing, I kind of looked at it first like, oh, this thing has 4 strings. You can play a chord with one finger.
Yeah, yeah.
Really, this is what we're gonna do. But after, it took me a few months, but then I let go of that and thought, wow, these kids are learning, they're loving it. They're, this is great. I will never knock the ukulele again. And I continue to teach it for the next 10 years.
When you think about all the different, just some parallels here with like, well, I talk about teaching mathematics, and we talk about having these wide entry problems so that you can, you can talk about them simplistically. Like, so if I'm going to add 25 plus 17, I can enter it by like adding, like pulling out 25 things and pulling out 17 things, putting them all in a big pile and then counting them out. Like, so, I mean, I can really add that any which way I want, or I could talk about different strategies and different ways to add 25 and 17, or like thinking about like adding the tens and adding the ones, or, hey, 25 plus 15 and then plus a 2. Like you can get as much sophisticated as you want. And like having things like that in your arsenal of teaching, and it sounds like the ukulele is one of them, where it's like, you know what, I want to teach you musicality. I want to teach you like even like strumming. I want to teach you like what a chord is. Like you can, that the ukulele offers you like this broad way of entering into those conversations where, kids are seeing success, and like everyone, I mean, when you start an instrument, you want to see success. And so it's kind of
Absolutely. Right out of the right from day one, it becomes a thing. But you bring up a very interesting point too that I've often thought about, that there, sure, there are kind of set rules in music and things like that, certain ways to do things, but I've always believed, there's always more than one way to do it.
mm-hmm.
And that's where coming back to be able to adapt, you have to adapt to the student's personality as well.
Right.
That they may not go for the, reading sheet music every week and doing flashcards and, the old school kind of way that I was taught. You got to get,
Yeah. Yeah.
you got to make it fun. That's, through Jason's class at Lincoln Land, he introduced me to musictheory.net. And with all these kids, of course, being so plugged in these days, I started bringing in an iPad, and I would bring up musictheory.net, and they have these kind of fun exercises as far as identifying notes and things like that. You could put yourself on a timer and challenge yourself, and they took off with it, and that was another, again, Jason talks about this, another tool I could put in
Mm-hmm.
my tool belt
Yeah.
that you could adjust and pull out at any time. And even if, sometimes it may not work, but those tools, the more you have, the more successful you'll be as a teacher. I do believe that.
I mean, so yeah, so you're even like diving into, I'll take you as deep as you want to go into this music thing. If with music theory, that's awesome.
Yeah, well, until they start knowing more than me, and then it's kind of like, okay, you're gonna need somebody else. And I've always been insecure about my theory knowledge. It's funny how that insecurity and anxiety can creep in anything. Even teaching a kid to play guitar. When they've been playing for 6, 7 years, and it's like, okay, I want to learn this certain method of doing it. I want to play like this player. And it's like, okay, give me a week. Let me learn. And that's where I enjoy teaching so much, because I'm learning from the kids as much as they're learning from me. You
Yeah.
have to stay one step ahead. I
Right.
have to. So I've found myself, I just got a book by Al Di Mandola, I believe, but he's got all, I mean, just a theory nut. And I'm reading through this stuff. I'm thinking, God, how does this even fit in this guy's brain?
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know, but I'm able to take some of that and then introduce it to a student, and then we're both learning together. And
Hmm.
there's that camaraderie with that too, and that respect, and that's really fun.
It's cool, like being able to like take something to that level. I mean, because if again, it's kind of going back to your other thing about being prepared, like having that capacity. Like if a kid wants to go somewhere, if they want to go deep, and even to say like, I might not know it, but I will. Like I want to learn some more, or maybe you learn and like you bring it back to me or whatever. But just being ready to engage in those conversations, and even also to say like, I still need to learn some more. Those are all great, things about it that we want our teachers to be able to do and be able to connect to, and also tapping into those interests of the students. It's like, that's such a great lesson.
Yeah.
What else you got, Matt?
Um.
You know one?
Well. Oh, another thing that I've learned.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh boy. Let's think here.
Well, I had be prepared, ability to adapt. Did I miss one?
Ability to adapt. Don't let your ego get in the way.
Oh, don't let your ego get in the way. Yep.
And that goes back to the the willingness to learn new things or accept when you don't know something.
Mm-hmm.
But hey, give me a little bit of time. I'll do the research. I will learn it, and I'll come back not only with the information, but knowing you as a student, I will bring it to you in a way that you can understand it and we can start to put it to use right away. I mean, because in music, definitely, from my experience, the students learn the most and the best when they're putting it into use right away. It's one thing to read something on a
Right.
piece of paper, but it's another thing to play it and get that in the brain. And then it's amazing what sticks, because I've had a lot of parents too that like, I haven't played the piano in 25 years. I haven't played it. So I say, well, why don't you come in and sit down with Joey, and you can see what we're doing, what we're working on. And then 3 weeks later, I'll see the mom. She said, you know what? I've been playing what Joey's playing, and she'll sit down and she can play. And that's where she learned how to read the notes. She learned
Mm-hmm.
how to play 25 years ago. It's still in there, it's
Yeah.
still, yeah. And that's really cool too, and then you got the parents and the kid working together and like playing together, and that enhances their relationship, even further.
Yeah, and like that's awesome to have that connection too. Again, another parallel. Like, how do we engage our parents in these sorts of things, especially now in our some of our virtual learning experiences? We need to be able to
Oh,
do that. Holy cow!
well, yeah, well, that's where Lily, my 10-year-old, she comes, she's got some math homework, and
Loving
you
it.
know,
She's loving it. You're loving
uh,
it. Oh, it's great. It's
I'm
wonderful.
loving it. But like, for her, she ends up kind of teaching me the way to do it, and that's another thing, you can learn the most by kind of teaching someone else. So I'll tell my students, hey, why don't you try to get your brother or sister to play this song? Or why don't you show them, where the notes are and things like
Nice.
that? And that's just bringing them up to a whole nother level, and they don't even know it.
Wow, what a lesson. I mean, so like going back to don't let your ego get in the way. This is just a public service announcement for all the parents out there. Like if your kid doesn't, is doing their math and you think like, oh, I don't know what they're doing. Well, ask them to teach you. Like, hey, what do you know? Show me how you've been doing this. And like, that could be the best thing for them. Even if they're struggling, like to have them talk it out and trying to explain it to you, that might be the hurdle to get there. But you have to check your ego, right? I don't know the
Yeah,
answer to how to show you, but it's not the point that you know the answer. It's the point that the kid does, right? And so
absolutely. No, that's a
check the
great point.
ego.
Yep.
All right. So, okay. So always it's the year 2020. We're always talking about 2020 hindsight. So now thinking about your teaching, and you've done it for a while. You say 10 years. Has it been 10 years?
It's been 10 years. Yeah.
Wow, that's good.
Yeah.
So what would you do differently? So if you had to start over again, what would you do differently if you could do it all over from the beginning?
Well, just starting from the beginning, I would have had a little more confidence. As I said, the insecurity with theory and things like that. I can remember having a student come in, and she was young. She was probably 6 or 7 years old, but she was an extremely good player. I could tell that right out of the gate. And I can remember being so nervous that she played her piece, and I turned to mom and I immediately just said, I can't teach her. She knows more than I, just freaked out, So I just wish I would have had more confidence. And I did kind of hit the ground, I just kind of jumped into it. So
Yeah.
this was early,
Mm-hmm.
but definitely that. And I thought about this for a while. I don't know if I would change a whole lot, only because going back to, I had so many great educators around me that gave me tools right out of the gate. And I think my willingness to be open and to take it in like a sponge really, really helped me a
Yeah.
lot. Well, okay, now I thought of something that I
There
would
you
do
go.
differently. I would manage my expectations.
Okay.
I find myself getting very caught up in that and think, you know, I really thought you'd be to the end of page 2 now, playing both hands together.
Mm-hmm.
Well, come to find out, they had a family matter where they had to be out of town all week, and the child couldn't practice piano. Oh, okay, now I get it. And then you kind of adjust to that. So kind of, I would have just walked into each lesson, one a week. I would have walked into it and been a little more, just had better communication. I think I would have asked, how was your week? What was going on? Did you have time to practice? At the beginning, I was so stuck on, your parents are paying for this. We have 30 minutes together. Let's go.
Let's go. Yeah.
Let's go. And just taking that kind of personal relationship out of it. Because I was, I talk about George Eklund, and as wonderful as he was, an old school guy. It was authoritarian. I mean, he was kind of like, this is how we're doing it. Let's do it. And that's where, kind of going back, as time passed as a teacher, I would go back and think, okay, what was it about Mr. Eklund that I kind of started to pull away from? Oh yeah, it was that type A authoritarian. This is what we're doing. This is what I expect. So I would have been more realistic with my students in the beginning, and I think they would have appreciated that.
Yeah. How much does that you're talking about, like maximizing time, but having that minute to 90-second conversation about what they did this last week. Like, oh, you were out of town on a funeral and away from your piano. Okay, so that means like we're probably going to be backing up a little bit. What did you get to practice? Okay, now we're here. Versus, go and just forcing the next thing. Oh, you're not to here yet, and like you're getting frustrated. The kid's getting frustrated. Like actually, that 90 seconds that you spent actually means a better 28 and a half minute lesson versus like everyone's frustrated by the end and maybe not coming back. Right. And so,
well, yep. You're absolutely right. What a great point. And, even that 90 seconds, that could help them to stick with it for another year.
mm-hmm.
Just that, because you never know what other people are going through. And that's, and just in the world today, these kids have so many activities, so many things to do. And even right now, I mean, so little to do, the mind is racing and everything. So just that personal connection, definitely, you cannot put a price on that. I mean, that's especially in this music teaching world, because it is just you and the student. I mean, it's just one-on-one, and you want that mutual respect and then that willingness to accept what each other is given, on both ends.
Yeah, something that you said there with regards to like checking in with them as well. Like, I think one thing that I took it, I almost took it like as an offense if they didn't do my work. Like, oh, you hate me. That's why you didn't do your homework, or that you're trying to offend me here. Like, what's going on? Like, and the thing is, it's like, it's not about you, Joel. Maybe it's going back to the check your ego thing. Like, it really is about, like, they probably would want to do this, or they probably would want to do, like, even thinking about it my spring semester, where, checking in with folks was more valuable than anything, because like just seeing that, they didn't show up to class, but it wasn't because of me. It was because of, hey, they're at home and they're childcare and they just couldn't log on. And so I have to deal with that. And like, how do I figure out how to do that? And it wasn't an offense. They're not trying to say like your class doesn't mean anything to me. It's probably eating them up inside it by me putting a guilt trip on them. It's even worse.
Oh, absolutely. And they appreciate that. You checking in, there's that whole that human relationship that has to go both ways.
Yeah.
That's cool. Good point.
So what's the best thing you did in your teaching or you witnessed in your teaching? And maybe you've covered this, but I don't know. I'm curious.
No, I think, I can think of a couple different things. First off, just to keep it simple, it happens for me multiple times a week when you see a student, grasp something or achieve something or play something they've always, and it could be something as simple as a G major chord. And they come in and they strum that chord and it sounds clean. Each string is ringing true. And you can see them just light up. You see them light up. And for me and what I do, that is like the biggest joy of all, of watching these kids and adults. I've taught students as old as 70 years old that when they are able to really play something, and that smile that they have when they've done it, that is, and I've been lucky enough and fortunate enough to witness that. I can't even count how many times, but that is so cool to me.
Those aha moments.
Oh yeah. Or like, I can do it, going back to the confidence, I can do this, another cool thing that I was lucky enough to experience during my time with Allegro Music and Dance Academy was we would do like these rock camps where you would bring in kids of, anywhere from 6 to 18, and you put them together in a group and you work together, and each teacher would have a group. And, and just for 1 week, 4 hours a day for a week, Monday through Friday. And then you perform at the end of the week and you record, and they give them a CD and stuff. But watching that come together, and people kind of find their place and where they are and who can do what, and who, the communication with them, I always, I thoroughly enjoyed that. And that was like a fantasy for me, I felt like I was part of the band. I was part of it,
That's right.
So that was cool.
You're like Jack Black, School of Rock. Yeah.
Oh, exactly right. And I heard that a lot when I was doing it, because, my energy level, there really isn't a whole lot of letdown really, but when I get around music, it's a whole.
For the listeners, Matt has been pacing the whole time we've been doing this. So just because his energy, I know his energy is high. Yeah, it's good.
Yeah, it's high. It sometimes can get a little too high. But that just going back to what we talked about, my musical background, I have always felt that way. It doesn't matter if I'm playing a private party, if I'm playing at a club for 1,500 people, I feel the same way every single time. I am in it. I am in tune. I get the energy from the music, every single time. So watching these kids experience that also, and again, even adults, that has been so fun to witness throughout my musical career. It's so cool.
That's awesome. So I threw you a curveball because I didn't give you this question beforehand, but giving you about 20 minutes to think about it in the back of your minds. But given that you move into this role of, I know you've been writing music for a while, but officially, like, working with Phrygian music and Phrygian Frog music, and thinking about the songwriting, right? And so thinking about songwriting and thinking about it from my perspective, and selfishly for this podcast, thinking about how do we use that as a thing with teaching. I think with teaching, you have to balance the technical and the creative. Same thing for songwriting. So what are some things that you've learned with regards to songwriting, or any lessons, or what, just like, because you've really been focusing on it. So this idea of songwriting, there's this technical side, the theory of music, but then also you're trying to be creative and come up with something that people want to listen to. Like, what have you been learning?
Well, it's been a struggle for me throughout the years, talking about balancing the two. 10 years ago, I was trying to write things that were really hard to play, very technical. And I always wanted people to be like, wow, look at that guitar player. Like he's moving all over the board. And, and as I, grew up and I look back at it now, I was like, what are you doing playing so many notes? You don't need so many notes. If you're trying to get people, I was doing it for myself. I wasn't doing it to get people to enjoy it and have a connection with it or anything. I was doing it to please my own ego. So as the years have progressed, even with each day that we released, that's the simplest song I've ever written. But at the same time, I've had a lot of feedback from people that can really connect to it because there's a message in there. The music isn't in the way, and it allows and Jason has taught me this too, that, everybody interprets music different, that everybody can pull something from it. So with the songwriting things, going back to, when I sit down, and I don't necessarily sit down and think, I'm going to write a hit song today. That just doesn't happen. I mean, for me personally, it's one of those kind of, I walk by a guitar, I pick it up, and then, more often than not, the songs that we'll be releasing have kind of just naturally happened. And I've read from a lot of my favorite artists too, that the best music and songwriting happens when you get out of your own way. You got to just take a step back, keep it simple, and then you can always build it up later. And same thing with lyrics. I used to, for me, the whole cryptic thing and trying to, I'm just not that smart, maybe, I don't know. But I have found that if you kind of just, I'm one of those guys that, I wear my heart on my shoulder. I mean, there's no doubt about it. I love talking with people. I love the interaction of that. And I'm trying to, I don't even know if I can say trying to, but I have found that has been coming out more and more to my lyrics. They're in my lyrics, like it'd be, me talking to you, and not so much me talking to myself, so that's been really fun, and also, pretty scary for me to kind of put my feelings. And, with this Each Day song, I mean, it's the first love song I've ever written in my life. And sure enough, here's the first song. I've written hundreds of songs. What's the first song we're going to release to the world? Well, let's make it the one where I'm burying my soul to another human being. But and even jumping off of that, some people haven't looked at it that way. They've looked at it as kind of a positive outlook on life. And especially right now, we all need something like that.
Oh, yeah.
And just taking one day at a time and trying to focus on the good, because if we get stuck in that bad place, boy, I mean, it'll tear you apart.
Yeah. Doing what is necessary to keep yourself mentally healthy, right? And so it could be listening to some music, it could be playing some music, it could be whatever it is, like getting outside, getting out of my little dark no window closet here. Yeah.
Or getting into your little dark
that's
like you said.
That's too exactly.
It's a therapy, and with music, for me, it is my medicine. I mean, it really is. And just on a spiritual and mental health kind of thing. If I talked about this a few weeks ago, but if I'm having a rough day, if I'm having a great day, if great things are happening, bad things are happening, anytime I go and play music, I can feel either that dark stuff kind of be released, or if it's a good day, it's just building upon that, and that gives me momentum going into the next day. And just that it's that give and take with the music, that if you can allow yourself to get out of your own way, what you will get back will be, incredible.
Yeah. Like, even thinking of it, like, I know something I've looked at, and I know you play at church, and it's almost like people have ways that they tap into their spirituality. And I think music is definitely one of them. And so it's like a sacred pathway. I've read a book, I think, with that title on it, but just talking about all the different ways we can tap into our relationship with God. And I think this is one of those ways, and really seeing that as something that's beneficial. If you're hearing a noise, it's because my son is inflating a basketball right now in the garage that's next door to the closet. So that's okay. That's a little inside information for the listeners out there. Anyway, Matt, anything to add on to that?
Oh, man, I could talk for quite a while. I've been playing on Sunday evenings at church. With everything that's going on, our church has added more church services to keep the numbers down. So I have been brought in to play the 7:00 service on Sunday nights at St. John's Lutheran Church, and it's like a coffee house kind of feel, and they asked me I play 3 songs a week. And it's been so, I don't even know how my spirit has been revived in that way, and it's so easy to get lost and to drift. And I've done plenty of that in my life, believe me. But going back and playing some of these hymns, I think about, I played the Old Rugged Cross, a couple weeks ago. And I brought that up to my parents. I said, yeah, I think I'm going to do this song. And, they brought up, oh, that song was played and sang at your grandmother's funeral. So
Mm,
I took me back to her and thought about her. And just, you talk about too, when we try to do it on our own. I mean, I can't do it on my own. I
yeah.
really can't. And
Right.
that's not only from the spiritual side, but also that community of church and having in the faith and yeah, I could go on. It's been so fun for me to go back and do these things. And I'm doing some on guitar, I'm doing some on piano. So there's that musical aspect too, especially with things moving at the pace that they are now as gigging musicians. It's allowed me to have that outlet.
Yeah.
I can work on a few songs a week, and then I get to perform. And
Hmm.
it's been for me. It is definitely brought me even closer to my spirituality, and that's helped my mental health a lot too.
Nice.
It's been huge.
Yeah. Like, yeah, that self-care is definitely something that we need to all pay attention to. So Matt, I know you've got a definite answer to this one. Anything to promote? You got anything to promote? Huh? Do
Well,
you?
I do. Yeah, I do actually. We got some big things in the works, and Phrygian Frog Records, they've got many talented artists. It's not just me. You have guys on there that have movie credits. They've won Telly Awards. That they have a whole catalog of cool music that I would like to promote. So you
Mm-hmm.
can go to Phrygian Frog's website and see about licensing, and you can go to the about page and read a little bit about each one of the artists that are on the label. And of course, I have to promote my own stuff. I have another single coming out here on September 4th, and that's titled "Out of the Clouds," and it's another kind of a positive kind of look, but at the same time, it's I think it'll definitely be a reflective thing for some people too. I mean, it just really is about kind of the fog clearing, and you kind of uh, returning to yourself, or even becoming a better self.
Nice.
So that's coming out on September 4th, and you can find those on all streaming platforms. um, and I just can't. I want to promote Phrygian Frog Records because they've just done so much for me. Jason Waddell has really taken me under his wing, and for me to be lucky enough to be able to work with a guy like him, this isn't a guy that just sits there and says, because I record this music at home and then I send it to him, and then he does his wizardry and makes me sound actually, somewhat good. But he not only does that, he invites me to come out to the studio and sit there with him and go through the process and teach me what he's doing, and do you like this, do you like that? And that's something I think as artists, that's all we can really ask for. Well, you can ask for all you want, but you may just have somebody that says, well, this is how we're doing it,
Yeah.
and that's it. So that too. But again, just a lot of talented artists, and we each play on like for each day. um, I do not play drums, but the drums on there are from another artist on the label, Jeff Milner. He was nice enough to play the drums on the track, and I don't know what the song wouldn't be what it is without those drums. I mean, it just wouldn't. And
Yeah.
you know, it, that the whole process of, again, working with other musicians, having someone else, what they hear is not what you hear. So he was able to put some things in there that kind of filled in the missing pieces for me. And even sitting there, listening to each day on YouTube or Spotify or whatever, I don't hear it like you're going to hear it. Of course,
Right.
I'm hearing, oh, Matt, you're flat. What are you doing? You're singing the wrong note. What is that solo? You missed that. But it's just, it goes back to working with others. And Jason has taught me and lives by, in order to be great, you have to be humble and get your ego out of the way. That's the name of the game. And I've been so thankful for that lesson and for our time together. So again, Phrygian Frog Records, you can find them on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. We got some videos up there. We actually have a preview for each day that's on there that we kind of do a little banter and whatnot, and it's kind of fun, and just
Yeah.
showing them the human side of music. That's
Yeah.
been really fun too.
No, that's cool. I
But
think I shared that on the Emmett on Planet Facebook page, so it's out there too.
all
But also,
right.
I got a good link that I'll share on the in the show notes that you'll be able to find at ammononplanet.com/episode 30 for all of this stuff, even some of the stuff you mentioned, like musictheory.net, but definitely with Phrygian Frogs, and we'll put all that out there, and so people can see what you're doing and tap into the music streams so they can get access to the songs as they come out, and it's going to be great. So excited for you, Matt, excited for these opportunities, and excited that you got a chance to come in and share on the podcast.
Thanks, Joel. I can't thank you enough for having me, man. And just to go back to, you were talking about your, episode 0 and how you were just, getting it going, stuff like that. We as a family are all really proud of what you're doing. It's been really fun to watch you, learn. I'm sure you're learning from other, learning how to do things differently and things like that. And just to watch and to listen to you progress. It's just been really, really fun. So it's my, I'm honored to be on the Emmett on Planet podcast. That's for sure. I really am. So I appreciate it very much.
No, this is great. And we did get you a shirt too. I think we got you a shirt, right?
Yep, I have rocked that thing. I wish I could find it right now, but I know I wear it out. And even with kind of starting this stuff, I would walk over to the grocery store or something like that, and I'd say, "Hey, see this T-shirt? And we're not playing podcast. I play the music in the beginning and the end. Should check it out."
That's it. That's what we know.
Promoting.
That's when I know we've arrived. If someone's stopping you, like, wait, are you the Matthew Mifflin on the Emmett on Planet podcast? Then we know that's like a culminating mountaintop for us to climb there. So
anyway. Oh, absolutely. Your new guitar will be arriving in a few days.
That's right. Awesome. All right. So that is all we have for this episode of the Emmett on Planet podcast. Show notes for the podcast can be found at ammononplanet.com/episode 30. So that all the links that we talked about just at the end here to Phrygian Frog Music Professionals and Phrygian Frog Records, we'll put all that there. The links to Matt's single are going to be in there. We're going to embed some videos as well. So all that good stuff. And also, if you're looking for ways to support, one, go follow Matthew Mifflin on Spotify and follow his music and download all the stuff. Whatever you want to do there. You can also subscribe, rate, and review the podcast while you're there on Spotify as well. You can subscribe, or iTunes or wherever. Subscribe to the Emmett on Planet download containing teaching resources and updates from Emmett on Planet. We had a huge one from Jen Wolf on Google Slides that we mentioned a few times in this episode, but it's just amazing, that resource. So if you want to get access to that, you can go to ammononplanet.com or get access to the Emmett on Planet download. You can also follow at Emmett on Planet on Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, or like the Emmett on Planet Facebook page. You can also check out the Emmett on Planet store or the Emmett on Planet bookshop. Links are in the footer at ammononplanet.com, where you purchase and support the production costs of the podcast. We have masks now, actually, too, and coffee cups to go along with the shirts and hoodies that all say "Be the Good" on it, because I think we need that message now more than ever. So thank you for listening to this episode of the Emmett on Planet podcast. Thanks to Matt Mifflin for being a guest and for his music in this episode. And finally, thank you to all of you out there who are seeking to teach better and be the good in the world by investing in the lives of others. This world is a better place because you've decided to use the gifts you've been given to serve others. Thank you for all that you do. Peace.